What happens when perfectly rational adults decide that saving a few dollars is more important than their actual vacation? They become tactical masterminds. Today we explore the psychology of extreme cruise cheapskates. Wait until you hear how a counterfeit VIP card or a fake maritime inspection sign led to some deeply embarrassing corporate karma. The lengths people go to are absurd. Never do this. 1. Cruise lines generally allow each adult passenger to bring exactly one bottle of wine aboard on embarkation day. The policy is meant for a nice evening in the dining room, but for 52-year-old Dave from Illinois, the vaguely worded policy on his booking confirmation simply said one unopened bottle, with no specific volume limitations mentioned. Dave treated this grammatical loophole like he had just discovered a map to El Dorado. Instead of packing a standard 25-ounce Cabernet, Dave visited a specialty wholesale liquor distributor and purchased a Nebuchadnezzar. For those unfamiliar with the absurdities of French winemaking volumes, a Nebuchadnezzar is a single, monstrous glass bottle that holds nearly 4 gallons of wine. It is the equivalent of 20 standard bottles, stands nearly 3 feet tall, and weighs roughly 50 pounds. Dave literally wheeled his single allowed bottle of wine into the cruise terminal strapped to a foldable metal hand truck, looking like he was transporting a dormant torpedo. Port security was entirely paralyzed. The screening agent stared at the glass monolith sitting on the X-ray belt, then looked at Dave, who was holding a printed, highlighted copy of the cruise line's terms and conditions. The supervisor was called over, and Dave immediately launched into a passionate, rehearsed defense of the English language, arguing that a bottle is defined by its physical shape, not its internal displacement. Psychologists often point to this exact type of behavior as the sunk cost loophole, where a person will expend massive amounts of physical effort and money just to prove they are mathematically outsmarting an institution. Dave had spent nearly $200 on this novelty item, completely negating any actual savings, but he was glowing with the pride of a victorious general. The port supervisor, lacking the energy to debate semantics with a man sweating through his floral shirt, eventually waved him through. But Dave's victory was immediately followed by sheer logistical reality. The massive bottle did not fit in the cabin's mini-fridge. It didn't even fit standing upright in the closet. To pour a single glass, Dave had to tilt the 50-pound glass monstrosity over the bathroom sink, usually spilling a considerable amount of Merlot onto his own shoes. By day 3, because the bottle had been opened and stored at room temperature in a humid cabin, the remaining 3.5 gallons of wine had heavily oxidized. It tasted unmistakably like raspberry-scented vinegar. But Dave absolutely refused to admit defeat. For the rest of the 7-day sailing, he could be seen sitting stubbornly by the main pool, sipping terribly sour room-temperature Merlot out of a plastic tumbler, wincing noticeably with every single swallow, purely sustained by the knowledge that he hadn't paid the ship's bartender a single dime. 2. Ever notice how a certain demographic of men treat a vacation not as a time to relax, but as a hostile environment to be mathematically defeated? Gary, a 61-year-old retired structural engineer from Texas, refused to pay the cruise line's $25 daily fee for satellite internet. Instead, Gary spent hours cross-referencing the ship's itinerary with global maps to locate exactly where the free Wi-Fi cafes were positioned in their upcoming ports of call. He then specifically booked a starboard-facing balcony cabin and brought aboard his own hack, a homemade, highly directional Wi-Fi antenna constructed from a modified telescopic fishing pole, an aluminum serving platter he strategically borrowed from the buffet, and a dense tangle of copper wire. While the ship was docked in Nassau, the bridge officers noticed a strange, intense metallic glare flashing outside the passenger decks. The captain looked down from the bridge wing to see Gary leaning precariously over his railing, frantically aiming a massive, sparkling satellite dish toward a Margaritaville restaurant half a mile away, yelling technical adjustments into his cabin where his wife was refreshing her tablet. Port security was dispatched immediately, assuming someone was operating unauthorized maritime scanning equipment. When 3 officers politely knocked and entered the cabin, they found Gary calmly taping more aluminum foil to the rim of his platter, completely unfazed by their presence. He didn't apologize. He just sternly informed the security team that according to international telecommunications law, the airwaves were public domain, and his fishing pole was legally considered a passive receiver. The ship confiscated the dish for the duration of the voyage, and Gary spent the rest of the cruise complaining that the maritime industry was running an illegal monopoly on invisible frequencies. 3. The most coveted status on any cruise ship is the top-tier loyalty level. Earning the black card, usually reserved for passengers who have spent over 200 days at sea, grants you priority boarding, unlimited premium drinks, and access to a private, heavily guarded VIP lounge. Richard, a 44-year-old IT network engineer from Phoenix, viewed this system not as a loyalty reward, but as a digital fortress waiting to be breached. His hack required specialized hardware. 3 weeks before his vacation, Richard purchased a high-end thermal PVC card printer online. He spent hours freezing YouTube videos of cruise vloggers who were showing off their elite black cards, meticulously replicating the holographic logos, the metallic font, and the specific barcode layout in a graphic design program. He printed a flawless counterfeit black card with his own name on it. He didn't try to hack the ship's mainframe. He relied entirely on social engineering. Psychologists note that human beings are fundamentally wired to defer to confident displays of status. If you hold the right piece of plastic and act slightly annoyed, people simply open doors for you. For the first 3 days of the cruise, Richard was an absolute ghost in the machine. The visual power of the forged card was staggering. He would casually drop the heavy black plastic onto the bar at the crowded pool deck, and bartenders would instantly bypass the point-of-sale scanner, handing him top-shelf tequila shots simply out of conditioned deference to the elite color scheme. He confidently bypassed a 40-minute line for the main dining room, flashing the card at the maitre d', who immediately apologized and escorted him to a premium window table. Richard was genuinely drunk on the perceived authority, marveling at how easily society bends to laminated plastic. The escalation occurred on day 4, when Richard decided to push his luck and enter the actual inner sanctum, the exclusive keycard-locked VIP lounge on deck 14. He knew his fake card didn't have the RFID chip to open the automatic glass doors, so he employed the oldest trick in the book. He stood near the entrance holding a cup of coffee, waited for an actual elderly elite member to swipe their card, and casually slipped through the sliding doors behind them, offering a polite nod. He sat down in a plush leather armchair, completely surrounded by actual millionaires, and waited for the lounge bartender to approach. When the bartender arrived, Richard ordered a $40 glass of vintage cognac. Here is where Richard's mechanical understanding of the hack fundamentally failed. In the private lounge, bartenders do not rely on visual confirmation. The corporate protocol mandates that every single drink must be strictly accounted for in the digital inventory by scanning the barcode on the back of the card. Richard confidently handed his counterfeit card over. He had generated the barcode by simply copying a high-resolution screenshot from a random YouTube video he found online. The bartender scanned the card with a handheld laser. The digital register screen didn't just decline the transaction. It instantly flashed a bright, flashing red security alert. The barcode Richard had so carefully duplicated didn't belong to a generic VIP member. It belonged to a legendary, notoriously unhinged passenger who had been permanently and aggressively banned from the entire cruise line fleet for life after intentionally throwing deck furniture into the ocean during a drunken rage 3 years prior. That specific barcode was essentially an active maritime arrest warrant. Within 45 seconds, Richard's quiet enjoyment of the VIP ambiance was interrupted by 3 massive ship security officers in full tactical uniforms who sprinted into the lounge. They didn't ask for his room number. They physically lifted Richard out of the leather armchair by his armpits, firmly restrained him, and marched him down 12 flights of stairs directly to the ship's holding cell on deck 2. He spent 6 hours locked in a windowless room, desperately trying to explain to the chief of security that he wasn't a violent, banned, furniture-throwing maniac, but rather just a guy from Phoenix who committed sophisticated felony-level fraud to get a free glass of cognac. When guest services finally cross-referenced his actual identity, they released him, but the punishment was absolute. They didn't just confiscate the card. They charged his stateroom account a $300 administrative security fee, banned him from every bar on the ship for the rest of the voyage, and permanently placed his actual name on the very same fleet-wide ban list he had accidentally cloned. 4. Purchasing the unlimited soda package usually costs around $10 a day per person, which comes with a special souvenir cup containing a microchip to activate the soda machines. Martin, a 45-year-old high school track coach from Utah, viewed paying for 4 packages for his family as a mathematical failure. He purchased exactly 1 cup and immediately instituted a tactical beverage relay system that he ran with military precision. The ship's soda machines had a strict 10-minute lockout timer between pours to prevent exactly this kind of sharing. So, Martin set a repeating stopwatch on his phone. He would fill the bright green plastic cup with cola, briskly walk it out to the pool deck where his wife and 2 adult daughters were waiting with small paper water cups, evenly distribute the liquid, and then stand perfectly still, staring at his phone timer until it hit 0. He repeated this grueling shuttle run every 10 minutes for 6 straight hours on the first sea day. Watching a grown man voluntarily transform his expensive, relaxing vacation into a deeply stressful, timed athletic event just to save $30 is a remarkable display of human stubbornness. The fatal flaw in Martin's operation was his deep fear of cross-contamination. That evening, wanting to ensure the cup was entirely sanitary for the next day's marathon, he decided to sterilize it in his stateroom sink using water he heated in the coffee maker. The boiling water instantly warped the plastic and completely fried the internal microchip hidden in the base. When he proudly approached the machine the next morning to begin his first relay, the screen simply flashed a red error message. He had entirely destroyed his only cup, leaving his family completely sodaless for the remaining 6 days of the cruise. 5. Ask yourself, why do perfectly rational adults inherently trust any piece of paper just because it happens to be laminated? Brenda, a 55-year-old realtor from Florida, understood this psychological loophole perfectly. She was sailing on a large megaship where renting a private shaded pool cabana with padded loungers cost a staggering $350 a day. Brenda had absolutely no intention of paying this fee, but she fully intended to enjoy the shade. Weeks before her vacation, she visited a local print shop and created several official-looking placards bearing a fake corporate cruise line logo and the words, "Closed for private maritime inspection." She packed these signs in her suitcase alongside 2 collapsible, velvet-covered stanchion ropes. Early on the first sea day, while most passengers were still eating breakfast, Brenda casually strolled up to the best cabana on the upper deck, unrolled her velvet ropes, and clipped the laminated signs to the entrance. It worked flawlessly. Other passengers took one look at the official signage and immediately walked away. Even the junior deck staff ignored the area, simply assuming a senior manager had reserved it for a meeting. For 3 glorious days, Brenda would slip behind the velvet rope, lay out her towels, and enjoy her stolen luxury suite in plain sight. It is a fascinating quirk of human behavior. People rarely question authority if it is presented with enough quiet confidence and decent typography. But on day 4, her brilliant deception intersected with corporate reality. The ship's actual food and beverage director happened to walk past the upper deck and noticed the maritime inspection sign. He instantly panicked, assuming that undercover corporate health inspectors from the Miami headquarters were on board unannounced. Desperate to make a good impression, he rushed to the kitchen and ordered his staff to immediately deliver a massive, complimentary premium seafood tower, complete with lobster tails and 2 bottles of vintage French champagne to the cabana. Brenda returned from the restroom to find over $800 worth of catering sitting perfectly arranged by her lounger. Instead of realizing the gig was up, she naturally assumed this was simply the universe rewarding her brilliance, and she happily sat down and started eating the lobster. The punchline arrived 20 minutes later when the actual ship's captain, notified of the surprise corporate visit, walked up to the cabana to personally greet the inspectors. Instead, he found Brenda, covered in cocktail sauce, wearing a floral swimsuit and holding a laminated sign. She was promptly billed for the daily cabana rental, the vintage champagne, the seafood tower, and an automatic 18% gratuity on all of it. 6. Celebrating a milestone on a cruise usually involves purchasing a specialty cake from the dining room, which carries a $25 fee. Helen and Arthur, an older couple celebrating their 40th anniversary, firmly believed that paying for dessert on a ship with a free buffet was an insult to their intelligence. Helen's master plan was to construct her own custom anniversary cake entirely out of scavenged complementary materials. She brought a large, heavy-duty plastic storage container from home specifically for this purpose. Over the first 4 days of the cruise, she stalked the Lido buffet, carefully collecting exactly 40 individual squares of free desserts, mostly cubes of yellow sponge cake, strawberry gelatin, and thick chocolate pudding. Back in her cabin fridge, using a plastic butter knife, she meticulously spackled these random components together, using the pudding as a mortar to bind the gelatin and cake into a single, towering cylinder. On the night of their anniversary, she proudly carried this massive, sloshing, multicolored dessert monolith into the formal dining room and demanded the waiters sing to them. But Helen failed to account for the structural integrity of room-temperature pudding. The main dining room was quite warm, and as the waiters gathered around the table to begin singing, the gelatinous mortar holding the structure together rapidly liquefied. Right as the waiters hit the high notes of "Happy Anniversary," the entire Frankencake completely collapsed under its own weight. It slid completely off the serving platter, heavily depositing a thick, sticky layer of mixed strawberry jelly and chocolate pudding directly onto Arthur's lap. 7. Every luxury cruise line features a pair of incredibly plush, heavy-duty Egyptian cotton robes hanging in the stateroom closet. They are undeniably comfortable, and according to the small printed placard sitting on the shelf, taking them home will result in a $150 charge per robe being applied to your final folio. Gary and Linda, a couple in their late 50s from Wisconsin, wanted the robes, but their entire personal philosophy was built on the foundation of never paying retail price for souvenirs. Their hack was a meticulously planned operation they referred to as the textile exchange. 2 weeks before sailing, they visited a massive discount superstore and spent $24 on 2 blindingly white, incredibly cheap, static-inducing polyester bathrobes. They packed these scratchy synthetic garments into their luggage, actively sacrificing valuable suitcase space that could have been used for evening wear, entirely dedicating a third of their baggage allowance to the heist. The plan was a classic Indiana Jones weight replacement trick. On the final evening of the cruise, while packing to disembark, they carefully folded the premium ship robes into their hard-shell suitcase. They then took the cheap polyester knockoffs, hung them on the wooden cedar hangers, and meticulously tied the fabric belts into the exact same decorative bow the cabin steward had used on day 1. They even slightly misted the fake robes with bathroom tap water to make them look as though they had just been casually used and hung up to dry. They went to sleep feeling like international art thieves who had just swapped a museum painting for a forgery. It is a classic behavioral quirk. The sheer adrenaline of executing a perceived scam completely blinds people to the technological reality of modern hospitality. At 6 in the morning, Gary was zipping up his suitcase when the cabin steward knocked on the door to do a final trash collection. The steward stepped in, took one look at the closet, and didn't say a word about the visibly shiny, translucent polyester robes hanging there. He didn't need to. He simply pulled a small digital scanning wand from his apron and waved it vaguely in the direction of Gary's closed suitcase. The wand immediately emitted a sharp, high-pitched beep. Modern cruise lines do not rely on visual inspections to protect their premium linens. They sew waterproof, heat-resistant RFID tracking microchips directly into the collar seams of the actual robes. The steward smiled warmly, tapped his device, and a miniature Bluetooth receipt printer on his belt instantly dispensed a printed invoice. He handed the paper to a completely stunned Gary. Not only did the ship charge them the full $300 for the stolen robes, but guest services added a mandatory $40 environmental disposal fee for the cheap polyester garments left in the closet, officially classifying them in the system as unauthorized synthetic waste. 8. Ever notice how people will endure profound physical discomfort if it means getting something for free? Eugene, a 68-year-old retired dentist from Ohio, discovered that the ship's casino offered complimentary premium cocktails to passengers who were actively gaming. To Eugene, this was a clear mathematical vulnerability waiting to be exploited. He sat down at a quiet corner penny slot machine, inserted a single $5 bill, and initiated a system of grueling, agonizing patience. He placed a small piece of opaque surgical tape over the machine's optical sensor to trick the system into thinking he was constantly hovering his hand over the console. He then pressed the 1-cent spin button exactly once every 4 minutes, the precise maximum interval required to keep his digital status indicator green and his account perfectly active. For 2 hours, he slowly accumulated an impressive bar tab, ordering 3 glasses of top-shelf scotch while spending exactly 32 cents of his own money. He sat there sipping his drink, feeling like a maritime casino heist mastermind. The punchline arrived when a waitress suddenly tapped him on the shoulder from behind to hand him a fresh cocktail napkin. Startled, Eugene jumped in his seat. His arm slipped off the leather armrest, and his elbow slammed forcefully onto the massive glowing Max Bet auto spin button. Before he could figure out how to navigate the flashing digital interface to cancel the command, the machine rapidly drained his remaining $4, then automatically accessed his connected stateroom account, blowing through $120 in 7 blurry seconds of spinning digital fruit. 9. Professional cruise photography is an incredibly lucrative business model. The ship's photographers set up beautiful backdrops around the grand atrium, take your picture for free, and then rely on your sentimental weakness to charge you $25 for a single printed 8x10. Marcus, a 44-year-old from Colorado, viewed this entire industry as a personal affront to his wallet. He wanted the premium couple's portraits featuring the sweeping Titanic-style staircase and the professional studio lighting, but he was absolutely determined not to buy the $200 unlimited digital photo package. His solution was an operation he secretly called shadow framing. On the first formal night, Marcus had his wife dress in an elegant navy blue evening gown and sent her to stand in line for the main staircase photo station. When it was her turn, the ship's photographer positioned her perfectly, adjusted the softbox lighting, and counted to 3. Exactly at that moment, Marcus was standing 3 feet directly over the photographer's right shoulder, leaning deeply over a brass railing with his own high-end DSLR camera, snapping his shutter at the exact same millisecond. Wherever the ship's photography staff set up a station, by the captain's wheel, near the crystal chandelier, or in front of the painted sunset backdrop on the promenade deck, Marcus would lurk just outside their peripheral vision. He would wait for them to arrange his wife, compose the shot, and then he would poach the perfect image using their thousands of dollars of professional lighting equipment. He even went as far as wearing dark, unreflective clothing on formal nights, so his own camera body wouldn't catch any stray reflections. This is a fascinating manifestation of perceived value. People will dedicate massive amounts of physical labor and endure severe social awkwardness to acquire something for free, simply because a high price tag is attached to it. Marcus was spending his entire vacation hiding behind fake ficus trees instead of relaxing by the pool. By day 6, he had successfully hijacked over 40 professional setups and was incredibly smug about saving hundreds of dollars. But he fundamentally underestimated the situational awareness of cruise ship photographers who deal with cheapskate opportunists on literally every single voyage. On the final morning, Marcus proudly downloaded his camera's memory card to his laptop to review his stolen masterpieces. What he found was a complete gallery of disasters. In almost every single photo, the ship's photographer had casually lifted an elbow into the corner of Marcus's frame right as the flash went off. In others, the professionals had slightly altered the timing of their studio flashes, intentionally blinding Marcus's camera lens and rendering his photos as completely white, overexposed squares. In the remaining pictures, his wife was naturally looking directly at the official photographer's lens, meaning in Marcus's photos, she appeared to be staring blankly at a spot 3 feet to his left. He had essentially spent 7 days documenting the side of his wife's head in various locations around the vessel. Here is the internal twist that makes this truly absurd. Marcus was so genuinely outraged by this defensive tactic that he marched down to the guest services desk and actually filed a formal complaint, arguing that the ship's staff had deliberately ruined his personal vacation photos. The guest services manager politely pointed out that complaining about the ruined photos was essentially a verbal confession to circumventing the ship's photography policy. Facing the reality of returning home with 0 usable portraits from a deeply expensive vacation, Marcus's stubbornness completely collapsed. He walked directly to the photo gallery to just buy the pictures the right way. But because he waited until the final 4 hours of the cruise to make the purchase, the pre-sailing discounts and midweek promotional pricing had completely expired. He was forced to pay the absolute maximum premium rate of $280 for the package, and when he handed over his credit card, the attendant cheerfully informed him that the final day package only included digital downloads, and if he wanted the physical prints he initially set out to get, it would be an additional $10 per photo. These stories prove that the thrill of the scam is usually way more intoxicating than the actual savings. Have you ever seen someone pull a stunt like forging a VIP card or hauling a 50-pound wine bottle aboard your sailings? Let me know below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep exploring the absolutely bizarre psychology of human behavior at sea.